Hang on. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the second in our series of Understanding and Responding to Mass Incarceration 2021 events. My name is Theresa Libby. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a faculty member here at Metropolitan State. I'm a co-founder of Understanding and Responding to Mass Incarceration, and I teach substance use disorders counseling in the Human Services Department and coordinate our graduate program in co-occurring disorders recovery counseling. That program trains students to become both substance use and mental health disorders counselors. I would like to introduce Raj Seturaju. Dr. Raj is a faculty member in our School of Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice and the other co-founder of this event. He's going to guide us in a brief mindfulness practice and give the land and enslavement acknowledgement. Dr. Raj?
Hey, somebody muted me. Muted me. Oh my God. Okay, don't put me on gallery. Just kind of put me on gallery. Don't speak of you. Okay, thank you all. Appreciate. So if you can, right, wherever you are sitting, just want to invite you to sit or stand in a way that you can feel your feet flat on the ground. So if you're wearing shoes, gently kick them out if it's at all possible, right? Otherwise, keep your shoes and place your feet on the ground. As you place your feet on the ground, I want to invite you to focus on your breath. Take a deep breath and gently exhale through your mouth. Inhale, nose. Exhale, mouth. Just gently want to invite you to feel that ground underneath your feet, like you have never felt it before, right? Just kind of plant your feet on the ground, curl your toes and tighten your feet. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to gently invite you to scan your body from the bottom, your feet to your calves. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to gently invite you to just massage your knees. Sometimes people hold up a lot of stress in that space. I want to gently invite you to just kind of be focused and mindful about all of the tensions in our bodies, right? Your knees, your thighs. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to invite you to gently just feel your back, right? Feel your back, feel your abdomen. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to invite you to just take a deep breath and fill your entire body with that breath and exhale. Inhale and just kind of check your back, your shoulders. If you're holding any kind of tensions in your back and your shoulders, I want to gently invite you to move your body. Just kind of engage your psoas muscles. Move forward and backwards, forward and backwards. Just kind of focus on your shoulders and just roll your shoulders, roll your shoulders. As you breathe in and breathe out, gently find that space that you're sitting in, your feet on the ground, scanning your body. Find that space of peace, mindfulness, and pause. Find that space. Find that space that allow you to be in your heart and recognize what's going on in your body. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to gently do a quick reading by Michelle Amster. And the title of her poem is A Vision for Justice. And Michelle Armstead says a long, long time ago, or was it last year? Or was it just yesterday? A seed was planted. A justice tree seed was planted. But how will it grow? How will this justice tree grow when the ground is poisoned with lies and broken treaties? As you breathe in and breathe out. How will it grow when water spills the blood of African and indigenous bodies? As you breathe in and breathe out. How will it grow when the stories of the settlers is the sun that scorches the earth, burns our backs and drinks our tears? As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to invite you to kind of not only think about these words and images, but also feel it in your heart and in your body. And Michelle Armstead goes on to say, and we know that our stories are not the same. And we know that justice, yes, justice is a verb. And we know that our work is all about our babies, taking care of the babies until the 7 generations, the babies we must love in ourselves, in our community, in our homes, and above all, in our streets. We bear witness, we work to create a safe and a brave space. We learn from the past to see the future. They say Sankofa. We tell our stories, share our narratives. And then, maybe then, this moment becomes a movement. So as you breathe in and breathe out, I want to gently invite you to again get out of your head space, come into your heart space, and come into your body. These words, these images, the experiences this past year, the 100 years since Tulsa, Oklahoma, 101 years since the lynching in Duluth. All this is sitting in the air, in our bodies and in our emotions. So as we acknowledge the land we are standing on and understand the struggles in our communities, I want to invite you to feel it in your heart space and in your body. Rasma Menakin invites us to work through the pain and not around the pain. Work through the pain. Let us breathe to understand. Listen to understand. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want to invite you to open your eyes and be present. Keep your feet on the ground, flat. Appreciate. Thank you for being here. Pass it on to Dr. Libby.
Dr. Raj, thank you so much. May we indeed move through the pain and not around it. Understanding and Responding to Mass Incarceration, or URMI, has been an annual event at Metropolitan State since 2014. Each year, we examine the phenomenon of mass incarceration through a different lens and offer opportunities to get involved with issues, organizing, and activism. Our lens for 2020 was planned to be mental illness, public wellness. We had to cancel the event that April due to the pandemic. So for 2021, we've moved the theme forward in a series of 4 events, of which this is the second. Everyone who registered for this will receive information about the remaining events. want to take a moment to acknowledge the campus offices that are supporting today's event. Thank you to Dean Maya Sullivan for the allocation from a Community Health Collaborative grant from the Office of the Dean of Students. Thank you to Provost Amy Gort and her office, and to President Ginny Arthur and her office. We remain grateful for the strong institutional support for this work. For members of the Metropolitan State community, we want to remind you of next Friday's event, the second annual Day of Honoring, Learning, and Action. It observes the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd and reckons with the work we as a community need to continue to do to respond to it effectively. Mass incarceration is a function of white supremacy and systematically oppresses already racially marginalized individuals, and especially Black and Indigenous communities. Many who enter the system of mass incarceration bring with them mental health and/or substance use issues, while others develop them once they experience incarceration and its consequences. One pathway to healing is through art and music. However, music from Black creators is systematically stigmatized and marginalized. This is what today's speaker is going to address. In a moment, we'll introduce our speaker, Naomi Young. She'll speak until approximately 9:50, after which we'll have time for Q&A. Dr. Darshini Gunatilaka and Dr. Derek Krim will be selecting questions from the chat and posing them to Ms. Young. Please refrain from entering your questions in the chat until asked for them, which will be around 9:40. Following the Q&A and a short break, we will reconvene at 10:20, and Dr. Raj will give us our charge for circle discussions in breakout rooms. We'll conclude with a report out beginning at 11:05, and we'll wrap up the morning at 11:45. Please note that Ms. Young talk is being recorded by Metropolitan State and will be made available online at a later date. So as always in Zoom meetings, please be keenly aware of keeping your mic muted. It's now my honor and pleasure to turn it over to Sharon Brooks Green, who will introduce our speaker. Ms. Brooks Green is a graduate of the Metro State Master of Advocacy and Political Leadership program, a PhD candidate in public policy and administration at Walden University. She's the founder of Piece of Hope, author of The Other Side of the Wall, and a longtime member of the URMI Planning Committee. Sharon?
Woohoo!
Thank you, Theresa. I really appreciate you for the introduction. Understanding and responding to mass incarceration is not just a forum, but a movement. In our 8 years of presentations, we've created interactive spaces where topics dear to my heart, such as the forgotten families of the imprisoned, women in the system, and voices from the inside, and many other conversations that have been featured in URMI, have inspired action and with your collaboration, much needed collaboration, input of understanding and responding to mass incarceration, this phenomenon. This year is no different. The movement continues even more so. Hi, I am Sharon Brooks Green, and I'm honored to present our featured keynote speaker, Naomi Young, whose title presentation, Post-Trauma, Present Problems, and Soul Solutions, how the healing of the souls of African Americans is thwarted by the censorship and elimination of culturally positive and spiritual hip hop. Miss Naomi is a published author, singer, MC, songwriter, and mental health advocate professional. She has relentlessly dedicated her skills, her talent, and her artistry to raising awareness about the dangers of ignoring mental health issues. Ms. Young speaks openly and honestly about the losses and pain in her past while continuing to move forward in her future, sharing for all to learn from, especially within her own community. Her productions, Side 2, Wouldn't It, and John 3:16 are hot tracks that you want to listen to and immerse yourself in the videos as well. As a fan of her music and in solidarity with her message, I respectfully welcome our keynote speaker for the 2021 Understanding and Responding to Mass Incarceration Movement, Ms. Naomi Young.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody being here. I really appreciate it. So I want to start the presentation off with a poem I wrote to kind of set the tone. Let's see. Okay. Imagine if there were no country. Matter of fact, never mind. John Lennon already asked us that. Imagine if a man had a beautiful dream. Wait, that was envisioned by the man known as Dr. King. Imagine if someone told Black people to defend themselves and have pride. Oh, someone did, but that's exactly why Malcolm X died. Imagine if MCs put positive lyrics in their rap songs. Many have, but receive no marketing dollars, thus they are unknown or ignored. Imagine if someone came down from the heavens to tell you, you are heavenly love, so move forward. Someone did, but they hung that brother and nailed him onto 2 wooden boards. Imagine if a brave woman had the audacity to free the slaves at night. Harriet did, but they recently made a movie that was a cinematic lie. Imagine if there was a charismatic man who could make enemies companions. But damn, that's exactly why the FBI and the CPD killed Mr. Fred Hampton. Now, I want you to imagine if someone shook their ass in a music video and performed ratchet rap songs. No need to imagine, she did and won Album of the Year Grammy Award. Now imagine if he had rainbow hair, teeth, and a large numerical face tat. No need to imagine, he got an early release from prison and a $10 million recording contract. Now imagine if he promised action for Black people, police reform that we still didn't get. Oh, no need to imagine, the dude I'm talking about is our current US president. Imagine if she fights, scratches out eyeballs, and makes glass fly. No need to imagine, check VH1, she's celebrated as a beautiful housewife. So why is it that we can imagine pain and unfairness from yesterday and all throughout history? But one thing we can't seem to imagine is the sinister motives behind those who control the information in the mainstream. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being with me today. My name is Naomi N.G.Young, AKA my artist name is N.G.Young. So welcome to this presentation, Post-Trauma, Present Problems and Soul Solutions, how the healing of the souls of African Americans is thwarted by the censorship and elimination of culturally positive and spiritual hip hop. Too often, Black people only know their history in this country as slaves. Also, if anything is known before slavery, it is usually the stereotypical beliefs about Africa and our African ancestors. I love this quote from Atlantis Browder, who is the daughter of famed archaeologist and historian Anthony Browder. Atlantis says, if Black history was represented in a 1,000-page book, slavery would begin and end on page 999. To add to that, I would say Black history since slavery ended right up until present day would begin and end on the last page of that book, 1000. Slavery is a widely known historical fact, but it's just such a small part of Black history. It is also one that we analyze the least. I happen to feel not knowing our collective history as a people causes much of our present trauma. I also feel not knowing your personal family history is traumatic as well. Do you know what your mom went through as a child? What about your auntie and uncle? For those of you who still have living grandparents, do you know the stories of what your grandma and grandpa went through? How about your own birth story? I tell my children their birth stories every few years on their birthday. I tell them stories about when they were babies and what we went through, funny stories about my relationship with their father, how we met and fell in love, etc. I believe for our own mental health, we need to tell our stories. I will briefly tell you part of mine. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I grew up in Robert Taylor Projects, just like Herbie Puckett. I moved to Minnesota in 1997 with my then only 1-year-old son, Jelani. And since living here, I gave birth to 3 more children, a daughter, Kayla, and then twin sons, Supreme and Sincere. After the birth of the twins, I suffered from postpartum depression, which went untreated and eventually morphed into postpartum psychosis. For those of you who don't know, postpartum psychosis is not just depression after giving birth, it is coupled with a severe case of schizophrenia. After a series of unfortunate events before, during, and after my pregnancy with the twins, I became fearful of them. And then later I became fearful for them. After 21 911 calls, both from my family and my neighbors, after over a dozen hospitalizations in a 6-month period, after being turned away for mental health treatment multiple times due to a lack of parity coverage from my medical insurance, I did the unthinkable. On July 4th, 2003, I drove to the Taste of Minnesota, walked down the street until I came to the bridge, and jumped into the Mississippi River after throwing my twins' sons in. A bystander by the name of Richard Dahlstrom jumped in to save us. Supreme and I were rescued. My other son, Sincere Understanding, Allah, died. Now, the most important part of my story, and really any story, is not the what, it's not the when, or even the who. The most important part of any story is the why. Why did it happen? How many of you became uncomfortable after hearing my story? It is one that is difficult to hear, I know, and it hurts me a little bit every time I tell it. But I imagine it's because some of that discomfort is because you don't know the why. I only gave you the what. I basically gave you the Cliff Notes version of my story. Many details are missing from what I told you. Well, you see, trauma works the same way. When you don't understand the complete story of suffering and trauma, be it yours or others, it causes more trauma and suffering. So here's a more detailed version of my story. Here is the why. The day 9/11 happened was the beginning of the end for me. I was at work as a medical records clerk at a major health clinic in the cities. I was also at the time a practicing Muslim and was dressed in the full garb at work. My coworkers were all gathered around a small 13-inch television watching the coverage. And that day, everyone was in a state of shock. The next day, however, everyone was in a state of anger. Charts were thrown at me. People talked about burning Muslims, and we're gonna burn them so bad. The amount of anti-Islamic sentiment was staggering. That day, I walked off my job. The day after 9/11 was the last time I held a steady job before I went to prison. Later, some other Muslim women I knew told me they took their children out of school due to them being bullied and beat up. They even went up so far as to go and change their Muslim sounding names and enroll them in schools far from the ones they were attending. I desperately wanted proof that things were better than this. So I had my television on CNN 24/7. Instead of hearing the hope I searched for, I listened to reports of physical abuse and even torture and death of detainees at Guantanamo Bay Prison in Cuba, where they were housing suspected terrorists. Many of the men were being held, at least from what I was hearing, was for having the same last name as one of the would-be hijackers, or were just born in the wrong part of the world. These events and my perception of these events fed my fear and paranoia, and was the trigger for the onset of my mental illness, specifically at that time, depression and anxiety. Months later, when I gave birth to my twin sons, their dad, also a practicing Muslim, named them Sincere Understanding, Allah, and Supreme Knowledge, Allah. By the time the twins were born, their dad and I were not together. We had split peacefully months earlier. Although he was still there somewhat for his sons, he was not there for me. If you can imagine growing up Christian for years and years as I had, next converting to Islam and listening to the hatred of Muslim and Islam for months and months, and finally being cooped up in my home as a social outcast with my babies, who the world believed were terrorists, and my television on CNN 24/7, and my very, very sick mind for weeks and weeks and even more weeks without proper treatment. In 2003, between January and July, I had been hospitalized a total of 7 times. My lawyer told me and my family and my neighbors had called 911 for my strange behavior and psychotic episodes a total of 21 times. There was a mountain of evidence to support and prove that I was symptomatic from my mental illness. But back then, the maximum stay at an inpatient hospital that insurance would pay for was 2 weeks when a person was displaying symptoms without any violent outbursts. I wasn't violent, never had been violent, never been to jail or had a criminal history. In the end, that didn't matter. Fear and paranoia held me hostage mentally. On one of my episodes, I walked around holding my twin sons in my arms for 8 hours straight. I felt the people around me, even my family, weren't who they said they were, like they were imposters, like that movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I became so delusional and paranoid. I believed the FBI at any moment was going to kick in my door, drag me and my children out, and take us to Guantanamo Bay and torture and kill us slowly. To me, this was so real. The world believed all Muslims were terrorists, right? So that means so were me and my children. And I had seen on television how the world treats terrorists. During this time, I read in the book, Behold a Pale Horse. It is a book written by William C. Cooper, a former naval intelligence officer for the US government. This is like a tell-all book he wrote of secret government conspiracies and other hidden information from the public. He wrote about one secret government program implemented to decrease the birth of minorities by praising and supporting a gay agenda, and thereby decreasing the population growth of minorities who they hoped would adopt this lifestyle because gays can't have children. He went on to say that after the gays have served their purpose, they too would also be exterminated. The name of this government program was called MK Naomi. On page 168 in this book, the Behold the Pale Horse, it states, since large populations were to be decimated, the ruling elite decided to target the undesirable elements of society. Specifically targeted were the Black, Hispanic, and homosexual populations. The poor homosexuals were encouraged on the one hand and scheduled for extinction on the other. Again, the name of this program was called MK Naomi. I couldn't believe I had read that. You see, the worst thing a psychotic person can have is physical evidence to support their own delusion. To me, this was the smoking gun that proved that that they really were after me and my babies, but not because we were terrorists, but because we were Black. So combined with that book, the growing hostility towards Muslims in the wake of 9/11, a lack of culturally competent treatment and professional support, and the ignorance of my family and myself about what mental illness was, I did the unthinkable. You know the rest. This is the why of my story. Now notice how different you feel after hearing more information about my trauma. This is how we heal. We heal by understanding why we and others have been hurt and continue to hurt, and why even we sometimes hurt others. Only then do we begin to heal. The purpose of this conference is to go deeper on the subjects of mass incarceration and mental illness. So understanding what fuels these two vehicles is ironically where the power to eliminate them both can also be found. Just like understanding the reasons for another's trauma, like hearing more of my story, or understanding the reason for the trauma of an entire group like African Americans, is also where the power to eliminate these issues forever can be found. To take back our power, we must always start with why. Why are we as a people still experiencing trauma? Let's talk about it. You have to understand the psychological residuals of slavery. What does that mean? Well, Dr. Joy DeGruy came up with a diagnosis called post-traumatic slave syndrome. So she defines post-traumatic slave syndrome. This is her book. I do recommend reading it. It is a great read. She defines it as a set of beliefs and actions associated with or related to multi-generational trauma experienced by African Americans that include, but are not limited to, undiagnosed and untreated post-traumatic stress disorder, which enslaved Africans suffered and then later passed down to their descendants. There are ways we unconsciously behave today that have been passed down from our ancestors who developed these behaviors as a way to cope with the harsh realities of living in slavery to survive. I'll give you one such example, also given by Dr. Joy DeGruy, and I will just paraphrase. Imagine two women, one Black and one white, sitting in the stands watching their son's high school football game. The Black mother leans over to the white mother and says, "Helen, I just wanted to compliment you on how well your son is doing." The white mother responds and says, "Oh, thank you. Yes, he just won the science award. Did you know that? He increased his GPA this semester. He's in the chess club now. His uncle is an astronaut. The boy is brilliant." And she's just oozing with pride. And before the white mother can sit back fully, she realizes that the Black mother is actually excelling her son in several areas. And she responds to the Black mother to say, "Wait, you're talking about my son. Your son is the one who's really coming along." The Black mother says, "Child, that boy is something else. Woo, he is a handful. Girl, you just don't know, that boy works my nerves." Now, the behavior is common. It's common among culture lines. The secret some of us know is that the Black mother is actually really proud of her son. So why is she doing this? Let's rewind the tape back to slavery. A Black mother is standing in a field with her young children, and Massa comes around and asks and says, "Minnie, is that your boy? Oh, he's really coming along, isn't he? He's a strong one, ain't he?" What is Minnie gonna do then? "Oh no, sir, he's shiftless and stupid. The boy ain't got good sense." Why is she doing this? If he's a boy, I don't want you to sell him. If he's a girl, I don't want you to breed her. This is called maladaptive social behavior from living in a hostile environment. Most Black people never unlearn that. We know that we pass down characteristics through our genetic code, like eye color, features, body type, etc. However, research has shown that human beings also pass down our emotional and psychological trauma in our genetic memory. We transfer the stimulants and stressors related to the trauma we suffered to our descendants. This is known as epigenetics, also called transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. The story of the two mothers at the son's football game is one of the ways this socially plays out. Another example is when Black men and women had to pretend on the plantation they did not love each other or like each other out of fear of being sold away or worse. Now, unfortunately, today it has become our reality. If any of you have read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, you have heard of the 10,000-hour rule. Gladwell explains in his book that to perfect any skill and get it down to where performing it becomes effortless, as easily as blinking your eyes. Gladwell goes on to say that these 10,000 hours can be achieved if you practice this skill for 20 hours a week for 10 years. And there's your 10,000 hours. Stay with me, I'm going somewhere with this. Let's just say, for the sake of this argument, that slavery and racism was practiced for 20 hours a week since the first slave ship docked in Virginia in 1619. Let's imagine that racism and slavery were only legal for 20 hours a week, and that after 10 years, America's 10,000 hours of racism and white supremacy became as easy and effortless as blinking its eyes. Let's do the math. First slave ships docked in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 to the end of the Civil War in 1865. That is 246 years using the calculation of Malcolm Gladwell. That's 215,496 hours. So in that time, there are 21.54 sets of 10,000 hours. 21.54 sets of 10,000 hours. Now let's go from 1865 to 1965, the end of the Civil War and the passing of the Civil Rights Act. You have 100 years of lynching, institutional racism, Jim Crow, Black codes. In that 100 years, there's 104,000 hours, which equals 10.4 sets of 10,000 hours. Now go from 1865 to 2021. That's 56 years. That's 58,240 hours of racial profiling, police brutality, redlining, gentrification, wealth gaps, etc. That's 5.8 sets of 10,000 hours. Now for a total, using the calculations that slavery was legal for 20 hours a week, that's 37.746 sets of 10,000 hours. And that's only if we are not considering what is really factual, that racism, slavery, white supremacy, and these other issues is a 24-hour, 7 days a week occurrence. Now let's look at legal slavery, which is mass incarceration, the topic of this conference. I spent 15 years in prison for the death of my son. 80% of the women around me were there for non-violent drug offenses. So if racism and white supremacy has perfected and expanded its global reach, then the people it rewards and oppresses has perfected being its victims. And yes, the folks that this system rewards are to its victims. They're its victims, even if they benefit from the system, and even if they don't believe or acknowledge their own victimhood. We don't like to admit this, but it's true. Nowhere is this better illustrated than in the global phenomenon and powerful medium that now has been weaponized against us, hip hop. Let me give you a brief history of hip hop. Hip hop was birthed out of the dirt left upon our feet after the failed civil rights and Black power movements of the 60s and 70s. America took precautions to be sure potential leaders of future movements could not be financed by the Black dollar, as prior movements and their leaders had been. So then, they decided to economically castrate the Black community. They closed factories in the inner cities. Then they eliminated the skilled trades from the high schools that provided the skills that Black people, especially Black men, used to become gainfully employed right after high school and take care of their families. In addition to removing the trade programs, they also took the musical instruments out of the schools. If this weren't enough, it's been recently proven that the CIA deliberately flooded the Black community with crack cocaine to wipe out the community even further. The movie Kill the Messenger, it's on Netflix, tells the incredible true story of the journalist who broke this story, Gary Webb, which, by the way, he was found shot twice in the head. His death was ruled a suicide, right? There were many other casualties in this social engineering war that prevented the Black community from making similar social and political strides as they had done in the civil rights era. However, in the middle of all this poverty, crime, despair, death, something powerful was born. That something was hip hop. Basically, persons, both named and unnamed, known and unknown, became tired of all the violence surrounding them. So someone said, hey man, let's try to outdo each other rhetorically like we do when we play in the Dirty Dozens, just like Muhammad Ali did to his opponents. And then we're gonna make it rhyme and then we're gonna call it a battle. That way we can settle our differences without violence. And whoever wins, they the real dope. Then someone else said, damn, they took our musical instruments out of school. So let's take these tables and turn them into drums and beat on them. And hey, you over there make noises with your mouth to make even more sounds like our elders did with hand bone. We're gonna call it beatboxing. Then, hey, you dude over there, cool hurt, gonna take the only thing we have access to use, a record player, and then we're gonna use our parents' vinyl records and turn both of those things into an instrument. And from this, the hip hop DJ was born. Hip hop was the first FUBU, for us, by us. Make no mistake about this. The music industry and radio stations wanted nothing to do with hip hop or rap music, at least until the year I was born. In 1979, Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang was the first rap record to sell over 1 million copies. Bam, right there, everything changed. You see, when the record companies and radio stations began to realize how much money could be made from this thing called hip hop, they began to slowly gain control over it and financially exploit it. Today, rap is the dominant genre. It outsells rock, pop, and country. Hip hop is a multi-billion-dollar industry. That's billion with a B. One of my biggest issues with the state of rap music today is the lack of variety of subject matter. There's only one type of rap being pushed and promoted. People will often say, well, that's what sells, that's what people want. I both agree and disagree with this statement, and I'll explain in an analogy I call the produce section. Imagine if you're a customer who comes to your neighborhood grocery store's produce section. Since the store opening, you and your family have been customers along with everyone else in the neighborhood. You enjoy going to the produce section because they have such a wondrous variety of fruits and vegetables. They have bananas, cherries, grapes, melons, onions, green peppers, and everything else you could possibly want. Sometimes you want fruit, sometimes you want vegetables, but nonetheless, whatever you want is there on the floor for you and others to freely choose between. Now, imagine you've been coming to this store for years, and then all of a sudden you notice the gradual shortage of the varieties of produce available. Then slowly over time, more and more is being taken away, which you find strange, but you figure like everything else, times are changing and maybe the store is under new management, which it is. And you begin to notice that as other varieties are being removed, it's being replaced by apricots. Now, you have nothing against apricots, even though you prefer other produce, you do indulge in a few apricots from time to time. After a while, you just accept this rather than make a fuss because you are working, you're able to cook less using fresh produce. And as you become a parent, you don't have much time to prepare meals. And you usually just go with something that's quick and easy or pre-made. So you start to bring your kids to the store. And by this time, there's only apricots on the floor. Your children don't remember the produce section being fully stocked with varieties of fruits and vegetables as it once was. So you finally ask the store manager, hey, what happened to all those other fruits and vegetables you used to carry? He said, well, this is what's popular. They sell, this is what sells now. Well, those other fruits and vegetables sold just fine. Everyone liked the variety, not just me. He replies, they're still here. We got them in the back room together in boxes labeled fruit and veggies. It's dark back there, so you got to bring your own flashlight and dig through the boxes. Disappointed, you start to walk out before another customer whispers to you and says, hey, I wondered the same thing. And I found out that the Apricot Corporation bought out almost 95% of all the grocery stores, and they push apricots and products made from apricots so people can just buy more apricots. And you go, wait, that doesn't make any sense. The other produce sold just fine. No wonder the stuff doesn't sell. It's not out here on the floor. It's not being made available like them damn apricots. Why don't they sell the other stuff they used to? Because the other stuff from before causes good health and longevity. Well, what's wrong with that? Because it's counterproductive to the Apricot Corporation's primary investments and business goals, which is these apricots are laced with the chemical that causes cancer. The Apricot Corporation secretly owns and has billions of dollars invested into cancer centers, oncologists, and even chemotherapy medication. They cause the cancer, then invest in the so-called treatment of it. Hey, you should come to our meetings. We teach people the truth using conscious rap music. I sell old school fruit out the truck of my car. You want a banana? This is the hip hop industry in a nutshell. So the original produce section was once the wondrous variety of the different styles and subgenres of rap music back in the day. The deliberate and gradual reduction and elimination of the variety of different fruits and vegetables is the record companies and radio stations eliminating and deciding what's made available in the mainstream, which is the produce floor. The fruits and veggies that were once on the main floor and were regulated to the back room in this analogy and boxes mixed together is when people say it's positive rap out there, you just gotta look for it. And finally, the mass distribution, marketing, and promotion of violent, anti-intelligence, materialistic, and misogynist and crime-ridden rap are the apricots. What many folks don't know is that these corporations that control 95% of the record companies and radio stations are also one of the biggest investors in the prison industrial complex. So on one hand, they promote this type of rap music, apricots, and on the other, they invest in the private prison industry. Interesting, isn't it? But don't take my word for it. Listen for yourself.
Can you increase the volume, Naomi, please?
I'm sorry. Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah, my volume's up full blast. Current slide.
No worries.
Okay. Sorry about that. I tried to have it as, yeah, it's all the way up. Sorry. Wait, one more video.
Naomi, I'm so sorry. I don't think the participants can hear the videos.
Okay. So none of that was heard?
No.
Huh?
Afraid not.
Am I muted?
No, you're not muted.
Okay. All right, I don't know what's going on because my computer is turned up. The volume is turned up as loud. It's on 100.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there a separate Zoom audio volume? For
No.
Zoom?
No,
Okay.
I'm not,
So
I'm
basically,
sorry that I'm not sure what to suggest, but I don't
okay,
have a solution.
okay. Well, all right. I'll just paraphrase what they said and go with that. Oh, I'm sorry about that, guys. So I guess you guys couldn't hear. Basically what the video was saying. It was people talking about that the record companies and the radio stations are owned by 3 corporations, and they control what's made hot, what's not, what's omitted. So it's kind of like backing up what I said in my analogy of the produce section. They only put out what they want to, and this is the only thing that they put out. So when people say, oh, well, the music is full of sex and violence and all that, well, that is the record companies and the organizations. By the way, also on the other end, promote, invest, and build private prisons. So basically the videos was just backing up the analogy of what I was saying. And when people say, oh, people don't want to hear that. Well, how can they choose from anything but what they can choose from? So I want to recite a poem I wrote, which is a paradox of the way I see today's mainstream rap artists. Don't get me wrong, I greatly respect a lot of them. I know that they're being used as pawns unknowingly in a dangerous and rigged chess game. I empathize when they don't know. However, I get pretty pissed when they do know and don't care. So this piece I call Brilliant is addressed to them. I know he is brilliant because I watched the way he killed it. I mean, the slick shit when he spit quick, but something deeper, I'll be like, oh, is this it? He let his mind atrophy, and his spirit doesn't even know she. I can tell by the way he degrades and humiliates me. His only comeback is, it's just entertainment. How is that when you spit the same shit that Willie Lynch did to manifest enslavement? You're like a slave who bragged about his chains on the slave ship. I can only imagine what he could do with a free mind, if even for one time, if even for one line. Spit a bar and let in some sunshine. Darkness creeps back and is no more time to even the score. No longer will I be your whore, dancing to music that lowers me to the floor. Intelligence can be used for good or ill. I understand that this rhyme brings you and yours meals. But how many self-esteems and innocence in the process did you kill? Talk about a free will. As I said before, I know he is brilliant. So how come all that comes out is ignorance? One of my spiritual teachers, Kabe Kime, has a quote that says, when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth becomes unbelievable. So let's talk about monsters for a second. It's easy to kill a monster. So imagine if you saw this thing in your basement. You'd be scared, and my guess is that you would probably want to kill it if you saw it in your home. And I'm also guessing you wouldn't feel too bad about it if you did, because it's easy to kill a monster. All you have to do is look at history to see what I mean. Look at the Jews before World War II. Do you really think that the Third Reich just woke up one morning and said, today, we're going to round up all the European Jews, put them in concentration camps, and later the gas chamber? No. There was a years-long campaign to vilify the Jews via media, print, and film. The Third Reich portrayed them as monsters first. They had news reports broadcasting them as monsters. They had film showing them as monsters. They had newspapers writing articles about them as monsters first. They did this because they knew that when the killing, torture, and gassing began, no one would care. Why? Because it's easy to kill a monster. The way Black men are portrayed in music, media, and print is the fuel packing America's prisons, justifying police killings, and praising the public for denying Black people basic human rights. I am told all around America they've built concentration camps. Interesting. The difference between the Jews of World War II is that the Jews didn't participate in their own character assassination like mainstream rap artists do, like guests on Jerry Springer and Maury do, like stars of reality TV do. I largely feel these individuals don't know they're being used to this end, but I can guarantee you these apricot corporations do. And now all of you who didn't know this truth, now you do as well. The time has come for you to choose who you support in this struggle. And by the way, this creature here is not evil. It's called a gargoyle. And they have been believed for years to ward off evil. And you will find many of them are carved on top of cathedral rooftops and found in churchyards. So I can only speak to me as to the solutions to this problem. Some will probably say we need prison reform or more funding for mental health care or better laws. I really feel these things are great. However, I feel there needs to be a shift in consciousness in each of us first. This system is not the physical structures, buildings, laws, and policies. The system is powered by people. Earlier, I called the civil rights movement a failure. Yes, laws were changed, but that didn't solve the problem. Yes, Blacks, women, and gays were able to have certain rights, but that didn't solve the problem. The Civil Rights Act allowed us to live more comfortably in the problem, to exist in the problem, but it never solved the problem because you can't legislate thinking, internal transformation, and attitudes. The problem is racism. This is the problem. That went absolutely nowhere. Racism is so ingrained into our laws and institutions, it's damn near invisible. Hell, it's airborne at this point, and we're all infected. Remember those 10,000 hours I talked about earlier. The funding and reform people often suggest needs to happen usually goes towards maintaining the problem existing within physical structures of the system. It's the people who uphold and the ones under the control of these physical structures who are in the need of reformation, the funding, the healing. For me, this is where the work needs to be done. So having conferences like this, having trainings, I'm talking about real trainings with measurable practical goals and outcomes. We need to heal the residual harm done to both those employed by the system and those oppressed by the system. And as I said, this requires a shift in consciousness, which is a personal choice, but it's a choice that must be made nonetheless. Yes, hip hop has been weaponized against all of us on both sides, but I survived my 15 years in prison with hip hop inside of me. And we've already seen that hip hop has the potential to destroy, but you can't deny that it also has a redemptive power as well. I'm living proof. So in closing, I'd like to share with you one of my music videos entitled Side, because the time now has come for all of us to be prepared to choose which one we are on. And I'll just load it up here in a sec.
Naomi, this
Yes.
is, sorry to interrupt. One of our participants suggested that when you, in your screen, share screen options, there's a share audio option.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. Okay.
I think it's toward the bottom of the screen.
Okay. Thank you for the tip, because I was so okay. Okay. So here. Okay. New screen sharing, share audio. So they say it's at the bottom. Oh, share. Mute, share video. So where's the share audio button at?
I can't check for it because you're sharing the screen right now.
Okay, share screen. Okay, here we go. Let's try to look. Share
On
audio.
the bottom left corner of the share screen, there's a share sound option. You see that on your?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
Naomi's gonna have to unshare her screen to see that option. She'll have to
Okay.
reshare it.
Okay, stop share. All right. I am so sorry. This went so much smoother when I
You're fine.
computer. Okay, share so you can computer sound. Okay, share. All right. So let's go back to the presentation because it's actually on here. Screen share. So I'm going to start it. If you guys can hear it, let me know. If you can't, then I'll probably just have to skip it. I hope not. Can you guys hear that?
And the Lord said unto them, know this, that in the last days there will be perilous times. Men shall be lovers of money, lovers of themselves, boastful, proud, disobedient to the elders, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Eat not the fruit of such.
Whose side are you leaning on? The time has come now to choose a side. Whose side are you leaning on? Whose side? Whose side? Whose side are you leaning on? The time has come now to choose a side. Whose side are you leaning on? For what will you live or die?
Now I'ma be clear, as I know how to be. To me, that's the purpose of a real MC. We are the news, reporters of the streets, but the people perish when it's we that can't see. We beef with ourselves, judge others and don't care. Egos in charge, pimping with a conscious woke card. I'm not here to attack and condemn, that's whack. But then y'all get the tripping, I'm like, fuck that. The time for silence has passed and shaking ass, putting money above people and worshiping cash. If you're rapping about killing niggas, making 8 figures, popping bottles and fucking bitches, I'm not with it. But I used to be, so I understand. I was a child back then, I'm the woe of a man. Do what you gotta do or do as you please. Time is short, did you hear? Yo, he can't breathe.
Whose side are you leaning on? The time has come now to choose a side. Whose side are you leaning on? Whose side? Whose side? Whose side are you leaning on? The time has come now to choose a side. Whose side are you leaning on? For what will you live or die?
You can't hide whatever is in your heart, it'll come out, yo, through your words and through your art. We gotta learn to take responsibility for our own influence in the world of negativity. Do you? That's the beauty of this thing called choice. Just know, my fellow rappers, you have a voice. Better rise up and get a plan. If not, just know you're on the side with David Duke and his Klansmen. Don't believe me? Then let's go down the list. Proof is in the pudding. Smell it, stir it, yo, and taste the shit. Kill a brother, hate each other, and destroy self. Sound familiar? Go figure. Now that's a triple check. Still don't care? Even though aware, triple threat. Good news, it's not too late, my love. Yo, it's time left. I give you my hand if you need some help. You ain't never alone or gotta do it by yourself. Profess.
Whose side are you leaning on? The time has come now to choose a side. Whose side are you leaning on? Whose side? Whose side? Whose side are you leaning on? The time has come now to choose a side. Whose side are you leaning on? For what will you live or die?
For For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places, in our heart spaces, those that desecrate the sacred. Which side are you facing? If you're mad at this statement, you have already chosen your placement.
Thank you all for having me. That concludes my presentation. Sorry, it was a little wacky there. So if you have any questions, I think we're, I'm not, if we're gonna open up for questions, but yeah.
Naomi N.G.Young, thank you for everything that you've contributed us this morning. Just so appreciated.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
your brilliance and the power of your art and for bringing it into this space this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are going to take some time for questions. We have almost 20 minutes for that. I've also tried to reassure people in the chat that when we post the video of this presentation, we'll also post the videos of the two that we couldn't hear and your and the one you just played as well, your work.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So two of our faculty members, Dr. Derek Krim and Dr. Darshini Gunatilaka, are going to monitor the chat for questions. I see a couple are starting to come in. So I'm going to turn it, and to say who they are. Dr. Krim and Dr. Gunatilaka are both faculty in our Human Services Department, teaching in addiction counseling and mental health counseling. So I will turn it over to them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Naomi, I believe that the reason that questions do not come right away is because it's like a good meal and we're tasting flavors and seasoning and we're absorbing it all. Thank you so much for dissecting the issues like is not heard. I really, really appreciate it. Obviously, I want to talk more, but let's get to some questions. I have a question right here, Naomi, and I hope you can hear me, but the question is this. Can you speak to why you believe so much of the destructive hip hop music sells so much? I know you mentioned the systematic mass production of it, but why do you think such content is so popular, especially amongst so many young white people as well? I love your poem, mentioned how the degrading bottom shaking female artists won the latest Grammy Awards or won the latest Grammy Awards. How does that happen?
I wish we could have heard the video because it really went into the psychology, because these corporations, and we don't realize corporations employ thousands and thousands of psychologists to get to the mindset, to infuse ideas into your head. So part of it is, first of all, cutting off what is positive. You can't have that. You can't have none of that. We can't have none of that. So now you only have to offer them whatever is on the table. And if they're very hungry, they're gonna eat it. And so we talked about a lot of people don't know like the philosophies or ways of other religions, you know, especially Raj in the beginning gave a meditative. Well, some of these songs are mantras. Even if mantras and affirmations can make somebody feel encouraged and confident and actually manifest that which they're seeing, then why doesn't that apply to negativity? You can do the same thing you do. That's the unfortunate. Water saves us life. We couldn't die without it. But there's a such thing as drinking too much water. You can actually get sick from it. The sun provides us all this kind of energy, but it still burns if you get too much of it. So it's like, if these things can work for that, why they couldn't work for that? So that's one thing. One thing is that's the only thing being offered. That's the only thing being offered, number one. Number two, the reason why it's purchased more by white kids, I would say goes back to that 10,000 hours of racism, because we don't want it. Like, you take those same artists. I'll give you an example, Eminem fans. He's outsold every rapper ever, and he is considered the GOAT. And I've heard, you know, people like, yeah, Eminem's dope. Yeah, he has these lyrics, but I also think his narrative, his story is more relatable to that audience, his fan base. So you could take somebody that's equally, I've had this discussion, who's equally lyrical, who Eminem says, I ain't even better than, but because their content is relatable to most Black people, you know, he's going to sell with his demographic. He's not going to cross over to the demographic of Eminem's fans simply because they can't relate the story. His history, his story is powerful. Don't get me wrong, but he's speaking to an audience who gets that. Just like Nas is speaking to an audience who gets the oppression, the lifestyle of Black people. So it's many things. It's many things. And also, we're just gonna keep it. Sex sells. We know sex sells. And because it's like telling somebody who put 10 sugars in their coffee, 10 sugar substitutes, which is way more sweeter than regular sugar, and telling them to go to 2 scoops of grain sugar. They're gonna taste it and it's not gonna be satisfying because they've been ODing and used to 10 sugar substitutes in their coffee. So it's like that high fructose corn syrup of hip hop versus a bowl of fruit. What do you think people are gonna digest and want more? And that's just the reality of what it is.
All right, thank you. I think my colleague has the next question.
Hi, Ms. Gaines.
Hi.
All right, so I think you may have touched on this a little bit, but you know, possibly you could answer this with more of your sharing. So this participant saying, all of this makes me so darn angry and I'm ready to take to the streets. Ms. N.G.Young, how do you balance anger and hope and action? Any best practices or tactics you use to balance these strong responses to the work in order to keep moving forward? Thank you for being here and sharing your insights.
I just want to say people give a bad rap to anger or the extreme emotions, and you have that anger, but anger lets you know something's wrong. The important thing is not to stay there. Embrace your anger, but also anger is a surface emotion. What's under the anger? What are you most angry about and why? Really take that anger, go deeper with it, because I'll just speak for me. You asked me, I've been angry many times, but where does that come from? When I uncover my anger, it's because I feel powerless. And the anger, it gives me some degree of power. I feel like I got control because I'm being angry at the situation, when really underneath that, I feel powerless. I feel a little hopeless that I can make a difference and change. So therefore, let me act out physically because I can do something about the physical. I can do something about that. And that's the only thing that I can do, is something physical to make me feel like I have some degree of control over the situation. Number 2, I really channel, and I know everybody's not an artist, I channel, that anger is in my music. If you heard it, her side, I'm cursing because sometimes doing the right thing ain't doing the right thing. Like, you know, so I put that in my music, I put that in my art, I put that frustration because I know some people can't put it in a song and make a video, but I'm speaking to people who feel the same way I do. And at the same time, I'm exercising some degree of control and action and empowerment. So you gotta find a creative outlet and it doesn't matter what it is. I don't know if you want to crochet, stitch, play ball, doing something, channel that energy. Also find out what is the feelings underneath that anger. Because again, anger is a surface emotion. So going deeper and going under that to figure out what are you really angry about? What's underneath that anger? And then acting accordingly, whatever that is for you. So.
Yep. I am really happy that of the next question is asked, even though it just really captures and impacts everybody on a deep level as far as how you will respond. So Yolanda asks, with your story, were you able to heal the relationships with your children and your family?
Absolutely. That's a very important question. I couldn't have survived. I survived with hip hop, but I survived with my family. Luckily for me, I had family to take my kids and raise them. They were around. My two oldest children were able to visit. I was able to parent from prison. My son, who is now 19 now, which we have a wonderful relationship, he was just here spending the night in my house a couple of weeks ago. So we stay, and I've even brought him on one of my speaking engagements where I tell my story so he can hear and see the PowerPoint. And he's like, now I get it, Mom. But throughout those years, he's had my family in his, your mom was sick. Well, what does that mean? What happened? And he had me to talk to him. I can only talk to him on the phone to ask me difficult questions that I knew he needed an answer to. So that relationship is healing. He's still learning. We still growing, and I can't make up for the time that I wasn't in his life, but we have from here to the rest of both of our lives to heal and remedy that. And so I never walked into a courtroom where it wasn't a crowd of my family, because luckily for me, I'm someone who comes from a very big family. My grandmother had 9 children. My great grandmother had 20. So if someone tells you they're my cousin, they're probably not lying. But they even had to change the rule about how many guests could be in a court hearing because of my family. So that's something I know I've been blessed with that a lot of people don't, even though they may have the tools, they may have the resources of professionals or social work professionals. If you don't have that family piece, it really can go left for you because you don't have anybody else but you advocating for you. But I had my family the whole ride, and they're still here, and they support me immensely. My sister raised my children. She took my children when she was 21 years old, didn't have any children. She was living in a studio apartment and she was in college. But yet she took my children and raised, it wasn't even a heartbeat. She was like, no, they're not going to foster care. Bring my nieces and nephews to me. So like I said, I've been blessed with that. A lot of people don't. And healing the relationships is very important, especially for my son. Luckily for him, he was 14 months at the time. He doesn't actually remember the incident, but he did meet the guy, and I did, that saved us from the water. My family took him out to dinner. I'm sad to say he passed away of cancer, but we talked, we had a relationship, and it was a lot of things that happened. It's not one thing, but if I can have a foundation to stand on to explain and really my success today and my ability to do what I do, it's my family.
Thank you for your influence right here, right now. I think we have time for a couple of more questions, perhaps. Dr. Gontilake?
Yeah. So the next question is, I'll read out the whole thing. I think that would do it justice. So thank you, Naomi. I was part of the class at Hamline University in 2019, where you were on my panel for mental illness and criminal justice conference. I was wondering if you can speak more on your experience in segregation and how this affected your mental health, and if this affected you in any way post-release.
Yes. Absolutely. Wonderful question. Wonderful question. When I say I survived my 15 years in prison because of hip hop, here's where the rubber meets the road. So first of all, I went to segregation for mental breaks, because that's what they do in prison. When you have a mental health episode, which was a lot of times was precipitated by them running out of my medication, not ordering it, it's many times they ran out of my psychiatric medication. And then I got punished for it because I experienced psychotic episodes and symptoms from my mental illness. And the only thing they do in that situation is put you in segregation. It's called COS status, continuous observation status. And what that means, you get a shower once every 3 days. You're in your room 24/7. You don't get a phone call break. You don't get a shower break. And the shower comes once every 3 days, and you have to take a shower in front of 2 female officers. You're not even permitted to close the curtain or anything. So you take a shower while they're standing there watching you. No curtain, no nothing, no divider. They're watching you take a shower. And that's once every 3 days. You don't get phone calls, you don't get visits, and you don't even get tissue or cup, and nothing's in your room. The only thing you get is what we call the pickle suit or the banana suit. If it's yellow, it's the banana suit. If it's green, it's the pickle suit, which is like a jumper, tear-proof jumper with Velcro and a tear-proof blanket. That is the only thing you have in those rooms. So the reason why I'm so passionate and I'm living proof that hip hop saves is because in that moment, I didn't have my family. I had my family, I can't call them. They can't visit on that status. So I don't have that. I don't have even toilet paper to wipe. I have to ask when the guard makes a round, can I have some toilet paper? If I want water, I gotta ask for a cup, drink the water and get a cup back. I don't have a pen or paper to write. I don't have books to read. And basically I'm in a dark room alone with nothing. And the only thing that sustained me was music, was the lyrics of a song like KRS-One, I Will Make It, Never Give Up. Those 2 songs were in my mind. Now they were in my mind as if I had a stereo playing in the room. That's how much I heard them in my ear, in my inner ear. So that's the question I pose to other people. That's a good question, but that's why I'm so passionate. I want people to figure out what sustains them when everything has been taken away. When everything, your spouse, your kids, whatever, your food, everything's taken away. When everything's taken away from you, what will sustain you? That's what we need to get to and find. And it's also coincidentally where our purpose lies. Whatever that thing is that will motivate you and keep you going when all has been ripped away from you, what will sustain you? And for me, that was music and that was hip hop.
Wow.
Thank you. We have time for one more question before we take a small break. And so I'm gonna apologize right now to those who pose questions that we cannot get to, but I have to. I'm obligated to ask this next one because it's from, in my mind, a dignitary or guest of honor for initiatives like us for this call of action. And that is my friend, David Starks. Thank you for being here. He asked the last question, Naomi. I want you to speak to this, and I'm interested as well. He simply asked, could you please break down the distinction between hip hop and rap?
Oh, it's my favorite question. Actually, my book breaks this down perfectly. Illegal and hip hop tale. So great, wonderful question. What I want to tell you, I love analogies and metaphors. So you like pizza, right? Everybody loves pizza. Everybody can know pizza. Rap is a pizza. And you can get pizza anywhere, the supermarket. You can even get it at the gas station. Pizza's everywhere. Pizza, pizza, pizza. That's rap. Hip hop is the entire Italian culture, history, dress, land, language, and people. Hip hop is a culture lived by millions worldwide. But pizza is something that comes from, it's the most recognizable thing. It's the one that's oversaturated in the market. It's a million pizzas, and you get a pizza anywhere. That's only a part of Italian culture. But Italian culture is the people, the land, the language, the history, the dress, the customs. That's hip hop.
Woo. I love that. I got it. I won't never forget that. Woo, okay. We're preparing to take a 10-minute break because I think, as I said, that we were savoring what you were talking, and we're going to have some breakout sessions, some breakout rooms. Raj is going to lead us to. So for right now, let's take a break, and I'm going to be very specific with the time. We have a 10-minute break. So we're going to be back here at 10:22. Thank you, everyone.
Better be back.
And
Better be back.
Naomi,
Love to see you back.
Thank you again for an
Yeah.
amazing morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Do I get to come back?
Yes,
Certainly will.
Yes.
Okay.
we're gonna throw you in the room.
Okay.
Raj again. And what Dr. Raj is going to do is set us up for the breakout sessions. So the breakout
Everybody clap. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's move. Come on. Come on. Sharon Green. Come on. Derek Krem. Come on. Come on. I need y'all to move.
Okay,
It's amazing presentation, right? I mean, come on, Kareem, right? It's like, yeah, bro. It was heavy. Right.
So Raj, what are we going to do in these breakout rooms? What are we going to be?
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting that. Dr. Libby,
I'm here.
no more bossing around me.
I'm here to push you.
You're not the boss of me, Dr. Libby. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever that is, right? People say. But make sure we do some self-care, right? And somebody asked Naomi Young about how she does self-care, and I've seen the sister. When we first met, we met at a restaurant, right? She's coming in there with a bike. She rolled in. We had a nice conversation, right? Naomi does an amazing work in terms of how she expresses herself through her poem, and much of her work is out there, right? I hope you will access YouTube and get all the information, all the things you need of Naomi, and I'm hoping that you will be able to contact her. In a minute, I think Brian can throw her email, her contact information on chat. So make sure y'all access Naomi Young for her wisdom, for her experience, and for her spirit, right? She shows up raw. She shows up human, right? So towards that end, I want to make sure that we are all doing self-care. Self-care is not about self-indulgence, right? Self-care is about self-preservation, right? So that we